Begin log. The subject is social withdrawal. Standard diagnosis, a catastrophic oversimplification.
We're told withdrawal is just a personality trait. The data proves this is a gross misclassification. We're looking at two diametrically opposed system states. One is a metabolic preference. The other is a trauma response. The output might look the same, but the internal architecture is completely incompatible.
This log declassifies the evidence. The objective is to distinguish the system architecture of a biological temperament from that of a traumatic adaptation. We are going to dissect the anatomy of this silence.
Okay, the fundamental diagnostic error is a failure to tell the difference between innate hardware and conditioned software. Introversion, that's the hardware. It's a biologically encoded system for managing energy. Social anxiety, on the other hand, is corrupted software. It's a threat detection system that's been programmed by the environment to malfunction. One system is built to manage energy, the other is built to survive a threat. They are not the same thing.
The primary diagnostic here is a question of vectors. Think about it. The introvert is pulled toward an internal state of restorative calm. It's a metabolic necessity. The anxious individual, however, is pushed away from an external state of perceived danger. It's a survival imperative. So one is a pursuit of homeostasis, the other is a desperate escape from anticipated pain. And if you look at the neurochemistry, these internal landscapes are just irreconcilable. The introvert withdraws to activate the acetylcholine pathway. That's the parasympathetic rest and digest mode. The experience is one of calm, of restoration. The anxious system withdraws because of a spike in cortisol and adrenaline. This activates the HPA axis, the fight-or-flight response. The subjective experience there is hypervigilance and dread. Let's be clear, the chemicals of rest are not the chemicals of fear.
The hardware specification is rooted in what's called the reticular activating system, or RAS. Research from Ising confirms that the introvert's RAS is basically factory set to a high level of alertness. They operate near their optimal cortical arousal by default, so any external stimulation pushes them right past the peak and into overload. Withdrawal isn't a choice. It's a non-negotiable homeostatic necessity to prevent system failure. It's a regulatory function, not a psychological defect.
In sharp contrast, the anxious individual's software is corrupted by an amygdala hijack. Functional MRI data shows hyperactivity in this region. It misinterprets neutral social cues, a pause in conversation, an unsmiling face, as an imminent threat. This triggers a full-blown survival response. So withdrawal isn't a preference. It's a defensive maneuver forced by a system that is hallucinating danger where none actually exists.
And this distinction isn't just theoretical, it's encoded in the data. We can see it in the genetic markers and in the longitudinal impact of environmental programming.
The hardware specification is significantly predetermined. Twin studies, multiple meta-analyses, they all confirm it. 40 to 50% of the variance in the introversion-extroversion trait is heritable. It's written into the genetic code before birth. This isn't a choice, it's a baseline parameter of the system. But environmental input is a potent vector for software corruption. The longitudinal data shows that a single adverse childhood experience, an ACE, we're talking neglect, abuse, it increases the risk of developing a personality disorder by a factor of 3.8. The software is highly vulnerable to this kind of environmental programming. And the correlation is overwhelmingly strong. In clinical subjects who go on to develop a personality disorder, approximately 90% have a documented history of these ACEs. So, while a subject may be born an introvert, they are made avoidant. The genetic substrate is identifiable. We can actually point to it. The DRD4 gene polymorphism, which regulates dopamine receptor sensitivity, serves as a primary biological marker for this hardware difference. The operating parameters are set right at the genetic level. So individuals with short alleles of the DRD4 gene, they have highly sensitive dopamine receptors. They get stimulated and satiated very easily. This genotype correlates directly with introversion. Then you have those with the 7R adventure allele. They have less sensitive receptors, so they require much higher intensity stimulation to get the same reward. That genotype correlates with extroversion. The system's stimulus requirements are literally written in the code. The data shows a clear inflection point. There's a statistical tear in the fabric where an innate, high reactive temperament gets overwritten by the aversive conditioning of developmental trauma. Longitudinal analysis reveals the deviation pretty clearly. An infant displays high reactivity. That's a hardware trait. Then, in childhood, a punitive environment installs the punished voice software patch. The child learns a simple rule: silence equals safety. By adolescence, that patch has become dominant, and conditioned avoidance emerges as the primary operating protocol. The physiological sensitivity of the hardware has been completely transformed into the psychological fear of the software.
And this negative reinforcement loop is the engine that drives the pathology. First, an antecedent, some social cue, triggers an amygdala response. Then the behavior, withdrawal, produces the consequence, an immediate drop in physiological anxiety. The brain's learning algorithm then logs the equation: avoidance equals safety. This loop just calcifies the fear response until it becomes an automatic subcortical process.
Now, the withdrawal state of the traumatized system is not rest. It is a dorsal vagal shutdown. This is a primitive immobilization response, a reptilian feigned death state for when a threat is overwhelming. It's not the restorative calm of the introvert's parasympathetic system. It is a desperate metabolic conservation strategy. It's characterized by numbness, dissociation, and collapse. This is the safety of invisibility, not the safety of solitude.
And chronic operation of this corrupted avoidance software is not benign. It leads to measurable and potentially irreversible neurological degradation and catastrophic system failure. First, myelin degradation. Research links chronic social isolation directly to damaged myelin, that's the white matter insulation, in the prefrontal cortex. This impairs signal transmission. It degrades executive function and the very emotional regulation circuits you'd need to override the fear response. Second, hippocampal atrophy. The constant elevation of cortisol from the HPA axis threat response, it's neurotoxic. It physically shrinks the hippocampus, the brain region critical for memory and for contextual processing. This just creates a terrifying feedback loop of fear.
The terminal stage of unchecked avoidance is total social atrophy. The hikikomori phenomenon, that's prolonged withdrawal exceeding 6 months, represents the system's endpoint, a complete, self-reinforcing, and often irreversible severing of all social connection.
The system is not broken. It's working exactly as designed. A brain that's punished for connection will rewire itself to survive isolation. And that is why the cage of trauma is so often mistaken for the sanctuary of temperament. End log.